All right. I think we are live. Getting there anyway. Okay, cool. Let me make sure.
All right.
Yep, sounds good. Cool, we're live. All right. Sorry it's been a while for anyone who's been watching these, which I'm surprised anybody is. 35 views on the first one, 63 views on the second one. That's more than none. So I don't know, maybe at least a couple people are interested in this vibe coding thing. I mean, I know plenty are, but it's kind of like, you know, do you really want to watch somebody struggle through this, or watch a professional? And I would say I'm not a professional, but I'm getting better at this. I've been doing it for a couple of years. So if you're just starting out with vibe coding, or if you're mildly interested, or if you're about at my level and you want to see what someone else at your level is doing, hopefully I can provide some at least interesting content and maybe some information that you haven't run across yet. So we've done a few of these. If you haven't watched these other ones, you could go ahead and go to my YouTube, and I've got on the live tab here, I've got a couple other ones. This one, the audio was bad, and I'm hoping that I fixed it. I think part of it was just because I had my phone right next to the microphone cord, and it was like interfering, and there was a bunch of clicking going on. But let's see here. Hang on, I'm getting a warning from YouTube. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Well, I don't know why that is. Hopefully that'll resolve itself. Let's see here. Testing. Seems like it's working. I don't know. Anyway, if that other video was too glitchy for you, I re-uploaded it to my main channel here as a regular video, which I will do with this one as well. So in case this video the quality's too low, I will re-upload it as a regular video. But anyway, hoping that that's not the case. Hopefully this is the error that YouTube's showing me is inaccurate, and hopefully it's playing just fine. I don't know, but you know, there's only so much you can do. Anyway, in this video I want to talk about a couple things that I think are very important, and I haven't heard anybody else talk about in the vibe coding sphere. I do follow a few Reddit threads on vibe coding, and you know, I read articles here and there that pop up about it. But something that I find to be pretty pivotal when you're deciding how to move forward with an application, and I just ran across this with somebody that I was talking to on Reddit, is you got to really think about who your audience is. Really, before you even start creating an application, you should be thinking about who your audience is. And I talked about that a little bit in previous videos, but even when you narrow it down to kind of like a target market for a specific application that you're building, within that, you can split that up into different target markets. Every application, you know, if there's any audience at all, there's going to be different needs for each segment of that audience. And you see this, you see the effect of this in like regular applications that you interact with every day, where they'll come out with a new feature and it's one that you don't use, and it just gets in the way of something that you do. You'll notice that when it's like an annoying new thing that gets in the way of something. I run across this all the time when I have to interact with Mac software. I hate using Mac, but when I do, I always it's a clear, obvious, like, impact of their approach to design that somebody who's considers themselves sort of a power user, which I would consider myself sort of a power user of applications. Like, I like to get in there and like change things and make it work how I want to. You really can't do that with Mac, or it's a lot harder to do with Mac or iOS. And I get really frustrated when I'm interacting with iOS because it's obviously not built for me. It's built for people who want to just use it and it works the way they expect it to. But for me, it doesn't work that way because I don't expect it to do all the stuff that it's built to do. And I expect it to be able to change things in ways that just isn't really possible or isn't as easy to do as it is on like Windows or Android. So for me, Android works better. For somebody who iPhone is built for, or in Mac iOS is built for, that's better for them. So as you're building out applications, you've got to think about that. Like, even though you would consider a Mac and a Windows to both be kind of like desktop computers built for the average user, that's not really the case. They are built for two totally different markets, and they work differently because of that. So what that means for you as a Vibecoder is when you're building little pieces of software like this, I like this phrase analyzer, Ultimate Pro. Every time I do an edit, sorry, every time I do an edit in Perplexity or any of them, they always kind of update the branding of it to sort of match what the new updates are. Part of that, I think, is to communicate to you that there's changes have been made. But also part of it, I think, is like, because you're changing the design each time, it's recalibrating who it's designed for and creating a new brand that is geared toward that market. I mean, it's not doing all that like consciously. It's not thinking through all those things probably. But the way that a large language model is built, it's using it's building a pattern, recognizing a pattern, and when you create a prompt, that prompt is like reminiscent of a different pattern than what your previous prompt was. So each time you add a new prompt, it's like adjusting that pattern a little bit. And so if the pattern of like this prompt equals this response, and you add a new prompt in there, then it's going to be a different response. So each time it's going to be adjusting that. It'll not only adjust the code, but it'll adjust the branding of the application. So a great example of this is I use two different models, two different LLMs. I use Perplexity for one and Grok for another to build two very different MVPs, two very different minimum viable products, applications. And I use the same prompts, but got different responses because I was using different models. And so that's another factor. Let me show you. This is one application I created, and this is another application I created, both using the same prompts, but using different models. And the reason for that is because they are built on their own like data sets, and also have their own internal prompts that slightly adjust what comes out, the response that comes out. So these two versions of this same application, and again, if you go back and or if you haven't gone back and watched my previous videos, I was building a phrase frequency analyzer. What that is a little web app that you can dump in a bunch of text, and it'll show you how, like, different phrases and how often those appear. So if you want to do some research on, say, a market segment about, like, let's see, let's get real meta here, and I'll put in phrase frequency counter app, and I'll put in site reddit.com. Now we'll get a bunch of responses from Google about phrase frequency counter apps. I mean, that would be the expected results. So anyway, I could copy all these and let's just copy a bunch of them, and I will dump these into this little web app, and it'll count. It's processing right now, and we'll see how it goes. It'll count common phrases in those results. Now, hopefully, yeah, Reddit looks like it's having trouble right now. Or YouTube, I mean. So if we go to forward, now this application, or this version of it, is a lot slower. It's a lot more technical. It's got more technical options here. And this is kind of the point that I wanted to make. And let's go ahead and use this other one because this one's a little faster. But anyway, it's counting these phrases. This one's 4-word phrases, 3-word phrases, 2-word phrases, single words. So it's counting these phrases, and it says this phrase, missing phrase show results, appears 12 times. Phrase show results phrase appears 12 times. And I think that's because I copied it from Google's, the Google search results page. No, never mind.
A search engine result
Google's listening. Like Google. Okay, Google. Okay, Google. Hang on 1 second. Okay, it's done. Listening to every word. So these are different phrases that came up, either because they were in the Google search results or in the Reddit search result examples here. And if I wanted to do a market, like some market research on this target market of people who use applications like this, this would be a great way to do it, to find some keywords, to find some things that, some common phrases that people are using about that topic. So this is a great tool for that. But there are other reasons to use that tool as well. And again, that goes back to who are you building this for? In my case, I kind of want to build it for everybody. That's not really possible, but I want to do as best I can to build something that works for the largest majority of people. So I wanted to have some technical options like this one does. You know, it's got processing options, cloud style. This is for the cloud here. Word cloud / phrase cloud. But I want it to work out of the box a lot simpler and easier for the average user who's not as technically inclined. So with this example, I've got some options here, but maybe I'd want to hide those as I did over here behind one of these like hidden elements. So you have to click it in order to see those options. Maybe I want to do that. Maybe I want to hide those a little bit. But the trade-off is then those are not as easy to discover. So you've got to click on something to see those options. So it's always a trade-off. You're always thinking about that when you're creating one of these applications. Like, do I want all those options to be out front? Do I want them to be easier for people to see? Or do I want to kind of hide them and make it like a simpler interface? Do I want to avoid them completely, like totally not have those options and just have the default settings be the only ones that are available. And also, what other things, like right here I've got some stats. This is based off of whatever text I imported or pasted in here. So what are these? What stats do I want to show people? Do I want to show people all the characters and words and sentences, or do I want to show reading time? In this case, I've got all of those options, but there are other stats that I could show, like how many of the letter A, or how many numbers, or maybe I want to strip out numbers totally. All of those are options that I have to think about when I'm building out an application, and I need to know that stuff so that I can tell the language model that I'm using how I want it to build it. And often I've got to put edits in there in that conversation. If you look at any one of the conversations I have going on with a large language model about one of the things that I've built, it's a long conversation with lots and lots of edits. That's always the case. And so it's best if you kind of have a pretty clear idea before you even start. And I mentioned this in the previous videos, but a couple ways, or one way that I've used that works really great for doing some of that work of market research is using Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a large language model tool built by Google that is free to use, as far as I know. I do have a Google Plus account, so I'm not sure if it's different for me, but it should be free to use for you either way. And the cool thing about Notebook LM is you can dump in lots and lots of data, up to 300 documents, and each of those documents can be pretty large. And you can then ask questions about those documents. You can even add in website links, YouTube links, and it'll pull in like Google Drive links or Google Drive content from your Google Drive account. And it'll import all of that and create its own model based off of that content. So it's pulling from, it has its own internal model already pre-built, but when you ask a question, most of the response is coming directly from the content. Or at least, like, if you ask it a question, it's going to be answering the question based off of that content. So if you say, what are people saying about X, then it's going to be pulling those answers from the content directly. So this is a great way to get to really dive into a target market is, for example, pull a bunch of Reddit threads like this, dump those links into a Notebook LM notebook, and then ask questions about your audience, which I've done here. So I created a couple different ones, and one was built more on the technical side, and one was built more on the user end side. And both of these, a lot of these were pulled from Reddit, but some of them were pulled from websites where people were talking about how to build phrase frequency analysis tools. And so if I want to ask a question from the technical side, I can go over to my technical notebook. And if I want to ask a question about sort of the marketing side, the target market side, then I can go to the target market notebook. And I can ask a question like, what are 100 phrases, or let's just do 10 to keep this a little shorter. What are 10 phrases people commonly use to describe their favorite? And whenever you're running a prompt like this, when you're trying to learn about a target market, try to add descriptive words. So like favorite or least favorite or frustrations or whatever it is that you're trying to figure out, like add in some some descriptive words that are going to give you a more descriptive prompt, or I mean a response that's more representative of a feeling or emotion. So when you're doing target market research, you can get a clear idea of how your audience feels about that topic, about their favorite. Let's do features and see what comes up. 10 phrases people commonly use to describe their favorite features. And you could add more to that prompt. You could say, make sure that each phrase is mentioned in at least 5 sources or something like that. I often do that. I'm just doing a short example to show you. So here we go. Easy to use, super simple. And let's say find 10 direct quotes. Oops. I don't know what's going on here. Direct quotes from the sources that prove the above. So this, you could use this response right here to help you think about how you want to build your application. And then once we get a response from this prompt right here, now you have some words you can use and phrases you can use to market the application. So when you're writing out your article on a page about your application, you can use some of these direct phrases, these direct quotes, and have that, like, have your article based off of those. So this is a great resource for researching both the target market and researching like what features and frustrations and other things that your target market is looking for or looking to avoid, problems they're looking to solve, and then that'll help you build out the actual application. So going back to these 2 versions, this one just like visually appears more technical. It looks more sort of like less design heavy and more you like just looking at it, you kind of assume that it's not built for like the average user. It's built for somebody who is more technical minded, and whereas this one is kind of like Phrase Analyzer Ultimate Pro. Even though it's got the word pro in there, it's using an emoji up here. You just kind of get the sense, you know, it's got these colors, these gradients. You get the sense that it's geared for a wider audience. So those are a couple things that you can think about when you're building out your applications. Let's see, what else did I want to cover in this video? That might be it. That might be it. Yeah, I think those are the main things that I wanted to cover in this live stream. Is just when you're thinking about your audience, you know, really segment it down. I've built quite a few of these little applications, and I play around with that idea. Sometimes I design something that's a little bit more technical. Sometimes I design something that's a little less. I have an idea of a range of my target audience, and it's kind of people who are sort of like me. They verge on like the edge of wanting to be technical. Maybe they're vibe coders, but they're not interested in wasting a lot of time on learning how to code, for example. So I've built a bunch of applications that are more for people who are like a little bit technical, but not super technical. However, some of my more popular articles and tools, like this one, for example, how to generate a shareable gift card link for Amazon. This is one of my more popular articles, and it's way less technical than my others. This walks you through step by step, like exactly what you have to do, and it's the simplest tool in the world. It just generates a link, and that's one of my more popular articles. Another one of my more popular articles is this bulk folder and subfolder creator, where that's literally all it does. It just creates a bunch of folders for you and puts them in a zip folder, and you can put subfolders in each one. This is one of my more popular tools, and it's not very technical at all. So, like, take that with a grain of salt. Your audience, your experience may vary. I'm kind of trying to build up an audience with a slightly more technical interest, but we'll see if I ever get there. I don't know. You're always going to have a wider audience if you're less technical, which is why Mac and iOS and why iOS is designed the way it is because it's less technical and more people like it that way. So I highly recommend using NotebookLM for doing your market research and kind of narrowing down what type of audience you want and how you want that tool to look. And I would probably suggest gearing more toward the average user, somebody who's not as technical. I think you're going to have a wider audience probably. That's usually the case. So I hope that helps. I'm going to keep this one pretty short. I just wanted to cover that one topic, and that's it. I'll see you again next time.